prefers a lot of these like ranged champions or Lee Sin over the likes of an Olaf. And JDG just defaulting back to that Twisted Fate. So really valuing a lot of the options it gives, right? It opens up to where you don't need to be first on Drakes with the Destiny. You have avenues to play out with side lanes. You have avenues to play out with picks. Isn't a terrible team fighter by any means. So valuing that versatility and getting Yagao on a comfort champion, which we know Yagao has always been an A-tier mid when he does get those champions he's quite comfortable on.
I would definitely put him S+ tier on things like Zoe and the LeBlanc. And this is an interesting tidbit of information, but you were saying that Kanavi's been playing a lot of Udyr in solo queue. Can you walk us through this pick?
Oh, yes. Kanavi's been spamming this. I've been talking to a lot of players about it. They think it's a lot more solo queue oriented because it still has all the same strengths and weaknesses it's always had, but looks like it just might be a bit of a bait. I still would love to see it one day. Maybe when JDG are playing against a team that's perceived weaker, we'll see it, but instead defaulting back to the Lillia, and now Zoom going to pick up the Gnar. So this, of course, has come back into the meta. It's just a very fluid blind pick. It did get some buffs across all areas, like the Mega Q, the E attack speed, things along these lines. It always felt like Gnar was a viable pick, even in 2020 into certain matchups, and now he's just fine. He's a fine team fighter if you play around that Rage Bar. Of course, does well on the side lane as well. So JDG keeping it very similar to Game 1, but hey, BLG going right back at it too.
They're doing the exact same things like we were talking about. Nothing really needed to be changed on BLG's side from their Game 1. Only the teamfight execution left in question. BLG, however, are going to get a massive ban onto that Kai'Sa, and I'm guessing the Jhin is likely to go as well. Those are your top 3 AD carries in this meta so far. And JD Gaming, think about their options, banning away the top lane and the mid lane. Not a lot of straight-up counters to the likes of TF or Gnar for that matter, so they can ban away a lot of just picks that they don't want to see in the enemy composition.
I think, like, theoretically, you could always just go the Syndra, which is a strong lane, but Zeka actually doesn't play all that much Syndra. He didn't play it at all in his, like, stint in 2020 in LPL, so maybe wanting to steer clear from that. And of course, we know Syndra Graves is one of the strongest mid-jungle 2v2s in the game flat out. But I like this ban from BLG. I was actually thinking that JDG would go towards the Aphelios because, once again, he's another champion that loves when the enemy needs to play into him. So I think JDG will get that Jhin, but I don't actually think it's as strong as what could have been with that Aphelios or Kai'Sa.
Pretty interesting right here. Aphelios is one of those champions that Loken did look like a hyper carry on. Usually Loken does fill in the role player position, but on Aphelios last split, he was actually extremely proficient. And we are going to see JD Gaming take away another disengaged champion in the likes of the Alistar, just making sure that that doesn't go into the hand of Mark. And now for BLG, they have to decide on most likely their top lane pick. Going to leave their mid lane for a little bit later for the counter pick potential. It is going to be Camille. And we have seen Camille actually be some sort of a counter pick to the Gnar. However, it isn't like Gnar doesn't have a fighting chance, as we saw yesterday between Doran and Rascal in the top lane there. So definitely not as hard of a counter as we might expect. This does leave probably Misfortune or Jhin, but no, it's going to be the Vayne. Ooh. This is something we don't expect out of Loken at all.
Yeah, it's a champion, again, I did not expect to see in this draft at all. Wonder how JDG are going to want to play around this, because now you have 2 very volatile side lane matchups with this Twisted Fate in the mid lane. How are JDG going to decide to allocate their resources? If one side explodes, it feels like it'll be a pretty tough game.
Definitely feels like both the side lanes have that potential to just go completely one-sided and have one team just snowball the game to a complete end. BLG have to look at their mid laner right now. We have seen Zeka play a bit of the Sylas in the past. Lucian is still viable. We have seen Crying play that. He's just going through his options at that point. Probably is going to pick something AP if I had to guess. They do have Graves as their jungler. So just switching through their options. What do you want to see here?
I think if they did want to go for something like that Zoe, it would be fine in their composition. Keep me away from the Lucian, but settling on the Galio, I think this pick does make sense in the context of the conversation we just set up, where we're like, hey, we're going to have 2 very volatile side lanes. It feels like they could break hard in one way or the other. I think Camille versus Gnar, it is viewed as a bit more, let's say, Camille favorable, especially as the game progresses. But as you pointed out, Gnar definitely has tools to play around early, especially if the Camille messes up. Bottom lane as well, I feel like whichever AD carry can get ahead, it's going to be very oppressive with their builds, and they're going to stay ahead. So it looks like Zeka just wanting to be able to answer the pressure Yagao puts out and even make some proactive plays himself.
And just small corrections on my end. It was actually Doran that got destroyed on the Gnar yesterday. Kind of flipped that matchup in my memory right there. However, we are, just like you said, a lot of these side lanes matchups, they're very volatile, super explosive. I really think it's going to come down to the pathing for the early game on which jungler is going to find that first gank. Where would you want to see these junglers actually end up on both sides?
I would like to see BLG give a bit of a cover to the Camille on top side. Camille also very strong at finding like a level 3 trade onto the Gnar. We know Gnar in mini form is quite vulnerable. And I don't realistically feel like JDG's bot lane should really be able to do anything early right between Vayne and Sett. Maybe we do see LvMao look for one of the early flash plays that we know Sett for, but if BLG can play around that, I think setting up Camille early can be quite nice for BLG.
Taking a look at our rune choices right here. Excuse me. Zeka is going to go for the Aftershock, a little bit more standard on the likes of the Galio. Do you think this is signaling that he's valuing the power for just frontlining for this team, or why do you think he's pivoting away from the Predator?
I definitely feel like it is because of the way he's going to have to play out in a lot of these fights, right? To our last game, theoretically, BLG should have had BiuBiu doing a lot of the heavy lifting. This game, it is going to have to be Zeka absorbing all of that damage. We know Gragas isn't that innately tanky of a champion as well, so you can't really leave that duty up to him. Also, JDG have a lot of just tank shred in general. They have a lot of damage, right? The Vayne Silver Bolts, the Gnar passive coming out from his W as well, so I like the choice Zeka's making this time, and we didn't even really see a lot of like proactive plays with the Predator last game. He didn't really need it. I think a lot of that was from how well BLG were shutting down Yagao, and if they can just do that again, I don't necessarily think you need that Predator to follow up or even like find the fight initiation now that you have things like the Hextech Ultimatum coming out.
Have to hard agree with you. You know, you can follow up on the engage rather than be the one trying to initiate it on your team. So it makes a little bit more sense to actually go tankier in this setup. And just taking a look at the Colonel's predictions, he's actually going to go for BLG in this one, a little bit more favored in his eyes. However, we did see last game the Colonel also predicted BLG to win with 70% confidence. It didn't really happen in there. And like you were talking about, BLG are going to be the ones, actually BLG are going to be the ones going towards the bot side with Meteor starting on his top. And it looks like Kanavi is going to be pathing towards the top side. So a little bit opposite of what we were expecting. And I wonder if Vayne and Sett are going to be able to survive this lane, a very difficult lane that should have the pushing power in BLG's favor.
Definitely would expect. We talked about kind of the strength that Gragas has in early laning phase last game. Again, you have a lot of early cooldowns, so very easy to just dish out a lot of damage, zone off the enemy, get control of waves, like get tempo resets. We're already seeing that happen right here. As Mark feeling feisty.
Loken gets the ignite onto him, has to walk back, burn the heal as well. So a very strong trade coming in for BLG and a great level 2 find on the likes of Mark right there. And this is exactly what we're talking about. You know, BLG choosing to all in onto the bot lane, trying to accentuate their leads, and they could get a 3-3 versus 2-2 trade right here if Meteor gets some of this EXP. We're seeing them coming in. It's going to be 3 level 2s against 2 level 1s, and Loken has to run. Oh, the stun is going to come through. LvMao flashes away. The tower tanking is onto Mark. He takes 1 tower shot. Meteor is going to take 2, and the play completely fizzles away. So very good defensive play onto the likes of Loken and LvMao. I love what they did there. Loken running away preemptively, probably reading that the gank was incoming just by the positioning of Mark and aiming, and then LvMao flashing at the exact right moment.
Yeah, I really like the read coming out from JDG. I think especially they knew once they lost that trade so hard at level 1 that BLG can set up the slow push and look for the dive. So again, nice footwork coming out from Loken. LvMao also doing his part. So BLG going to keep doubling down on their intruistic strengths as a team.
Yagao's hit up right here. It does look like a 2v2 that's developing. Yagao does flash out, and good play by Kanavi. He's actually blocking all of the shots. It's going to be a 1-for-1 trade with Kanavi picking up the double buffs, and he's going in for more. He still has a flash right here, and he does force out the flash on Zeka's side. So very well done by Bombi, taking some shotgun shells to the face just to protect his mid laner.
Yeah, great from him. Also gets the flash, also gets the wave pushed into turret. So Yagao now TPing back instantly, actually canceling Zeka's back. So Zeka losing out on a lot of tempo, losing out on a bit of gold in EXP. He does have TP as well, so he will probably use that to return to lane instantly. While on the bot side of the map, we actually saw Loken and LvMao lose a trade once again and have to back. So we're seeing, again, BLG's bot lane just be the strength that are winning just through 2v2 trades alone, and it's coming out from aiming on the Samira, finds the dash, dishes out the damage, finishes off with that Q, which sadly doesn't hit, but we were questioning this Vayne pick coming into the game. Honestly, I didn't know how this bottom lane matchup goes. We don't see Vayne all too often, and it is going a lot more like we kind of expected, where Samira and Gragas coming out ahead.
Again, Yagao is being targeted right here. He has no summoner, is knocked up against the wall, and he's going to fall down. Zeka takes 2 turret shots, but he's completely fine taking the hit for the team, and Meteor does find the kill onto that one. In the meantime, BiuBiu is getting that 3rd ring procced by Zoom. He is very low on HP, and Zoom is actually going to flash, going to go in for the kill right here. BiuBiu already expended his adaptable shield. But Zoom is getting sandwiched here between Mark, the support, and the top lane in BiuBiu. A beautiful stun combo comes out, and Zoom did not see that coming.
Yeah, just great play as well. Zoom was actually dominating this matchup, so not quite sure what has been going wrong for BiuBiu, but still, BLG just make a macro plane, abuse it. They realize, hey, we're winning bot lane so hard, we get a free roam timing on for Mark, bring Mark up, and at least get a bit of gold back into their pockets.
So we really have to chill down on this game because action is happening everywhere. This is one of those feisty LPL games where you have 4 kills at the 5-minute mark. Absolute explosion of action. But where do you really see these teams kind of setting up? It seems to me that BLG, with their control on the bottom lane, is going to be the ones that are going forward and kind of making the plays here.
And I think BLG should just keep doing that. Again, we already talked about this matchup in mid lane a little bit last game, where Zeka does quickly get to a point where he can just ignore the Twisted Fate. Also bought the Null Magic Mantle early because he's against double AP mid jungle. We're at that point now. We can consistently see BLG hover around bot side.
And once again, Galio's going to find the double taunt. They're going to go in on Yagao, who still doesn't have his summoners. Yagao is going to fall down, but the Lilting Lullaby does come through and actually saves himself. Meteor very low as well. Looks at like the Dream Dust is not going to be able to take him down. Does pop the potion and get away from that one. That was extremely close from both sides.
Yeah, Kanavi coming in extremely clutch. You talked about it, that sleep. Completely saved Yagao. They almost even turned it around back onto Meteor, but Zeka was able to zone away. It will equal out to this bottom lane scuttle for the side of JDG. I don't expect that they should be able to just turn outright to Dragon. Yagao technically does have his destiny up, but no real pressure in the bottom lane yet. Maybe JDG can just look for a play on bot, but Kanavi actually feeling confident enough to just go for it, knowing that Meteor's red buff is coming up.
He does have the Destiny to back him up. BLG look like they want to contest at this river, but they are outnumbered here with Meteor being on the top side of the map. Kanavi is going to go down pretty low, but he should be completely safe right here. And JD Gaming are going to take away the first Infernal Drake, right? Okay, Kanavi does take it. A little bit of a gasp coming from me. And in the meantime, Meteor is trying to equalize with that Herald. Very standard play. Actually, the Herald isn't up. Excuse me. Meteor is actually just trying to set up for a potential play onto the side of Zoom. But it does look like Zoom is fairly aware of this one. He is going to just hop away. And not much is going to get done here on the side of Meteor.
Yeah, and I actually think BLG giving up the Dragon in hindsight, thinking back, was the right play because Zeka didn't have his ultimate, to where we already both talked about the Destiny on Yagao, so not feeling like they really can look for that fight, especially with Kanavi being ahead in terms of levels. Right now sitting at level 7, Meteor only at level 5. And BLG then trying to pivot with the answer, playing on top side, which I think is not only the right answer play, but like we said, very volatile matchup topside. It would be nice to see BiuBiu get ahead where he's just pretty much lost out innately on his own. So it definitely seems like he needs some help in that lane matchup.
Ooh. Yeah, now you mention it, it's going to be a 27 CS lead on top for Zoom. It's just like picking your poison with this guy. You ban out the Aatrox, he gets a counter matchup and still does magnificently with it. I do want to talk about what's happening so far in the game. It seems like there's a lot of 2v2s happening that, in theory, BLG should win, but JD Gaming are somehow coming out ahead, and Meteor feels like he's actually missing a lot of opportunities to maybe get his side lanes ahead.
I feel like a lot of it comes down to the fact that Kanavi has gotten ahead of Meteor, right? Because we saw the 2v2 that stands out the most is that one in mid lane where BLG have mixed damage, they have more burst. It should be easier for them to come on ahead, but Kanavi was already level 6, already had his ultimate and was able to dissuade the play, so a lot of JDG's power is coming from finding Kanavi the advantage in terms of jungle camps. And it feels like BLG are a bit lost without this easy way of attacking mid. We do know, even though locking down top should be easier with your Hextech ultimatum, Gnar is still very mobile with that E.
LvMao coming in, trying to get a facebreaker in, but Zeka does walk away from that one. Isn't hit by the swirl either, so it looks like BLG are feeling pretty comfortable in setting up this Herald play. They know that Loken is not going to be able to join with the positioning he has on the bottom lane, and of course Yagao is just going home for a recall. This does look like BLG should be able to take this one fairly easily. However, Zoom is hanging around the play. The Destiny is being popped. The gate isn't being taken, however. And on the flip side, it is BLG that are trying to go in onto this one. They do find the likes of Zoom. He's going to go down, and it looks like game one being replayed all over again. Zoom getting caught out amongst the trees. Loken is trying to rotate, but he's very much slow to the play, and BiuBiu is going to find the stun for another kill. Loken finally comes in, but this is a 3v5. Are JD Gaming really going to chance this one? It's a 3-man sleep, and they do find 1 kill in return. Kanavi isn't done just yet. He just popped his flash, and aiming is the one going in into the 3-man, but he gets deleted instantly. Kanavi comes up huge with the pick, and how is this happening? JD Gaming, you're not supposed to be able to play these team fights where you don't have the numbers advantage, but they make it work regardless. What am I watching? JD Gaming come out of the 3v5, and they take away all of those deficits and toss them into the bin. JD Gaming always doing the impossible.
Massive question marks on both sides for me, Clement. We see that, first of all, JDG want to look for a 4v5. Doesn't make a lot of sense. They somehow buy enough time, bait out enough engages from BLG to where they're kind of winning this poking and kiting war, and they're able to win with the numbers disadvantage just like last game. And it's kind of coming down to what we talked about in game one. If you have better hands, it just kind of feels like you could win out. We are going to go straight into the replay. BLG have man advantage. Vayne is not here, but they have blown so many of their engage tools, right? The hookshot wall shot is down. Hextech ultimatum is down. We see Hand of Justice down as well. So JDG feel very confident to just kind of kite this one out, tether BLG at a range, and use their tools to keep them at arm's length. Aiming feels a bit cheeky, thinks he can go in. Mistimes it a little bit with the rest of the members. I think the sad thing is that Mark is so low, he really can't follow up with his body slam. And then, I mean, it's just easy pickings for JDG at this point.
I'm sorry, but JD Gaming just outplayed your entire squad. That was just, that wasn't supposed to happen, and you should feel bad that you got stomped by that one. That was a 3v5 play. I don't care whatever you say about BLG, but JD Gaming basically just, they outswagger them in that instance. However, Mark is looking for something. No, Mark misses the explosive cast. LvMao is low, but he does have the facebreaker for the shield right there. And Loken does pop his ultimate, trying to catch something out on the side of BLG. Kanavi comes in, doesn't really find the engage that they're looking for. And this is a bit of a consolation prize for BLG, as they do get good value out of that Herald that they've taken.
Still, Clement, it goes back to what I said 60 seconds ago. It does feel like we're kind of in a place where better hands are just kind of winning this game. We still see Zoom sitting with an even bigger advantage than he was before, all the way up to
CS?
almost 50 CS up.
What?
So, but at least BLG, again, they've been able to find some consolation, like you talked about with the play with the Rift Herald, but it quickly feels like this is going in the same direction as last game.
That top lane gap is just way too large. Kanavi does find the slow and the sleep, forces out the flash away from aiming, and he is going to be sorely missing that one for the next couple of team fights. We do see the Drake stack being started already for JD Gaming. They're at 2 at this point, and it will be the Mountain Soul. So that's a pretty good one for a team like JD Gaming that have like sustained damage on Zoom and Kanavi. So BLG, they're going to have to look to break this one. They're going to have to contest that Drake at some point.
Also interesting to note that we do see Kanavi going towards the Liandry's Anguish this time instead of the Moonstone Renewer. I'm kind of surprised where I feel like in game one, he would have needed to be more of a damage threat, and BLG had more of a front line that he could have, you know, looked to burn down with this item, but maybe instead just prioritizing that item with the healing coming from Aatrox with Gore Drinker. So that could be one of his train of thoughts. But at least he will be more of a
this. I've seen
he will
this
be
in
more of a
Demacia
damage threat this game.
He definitely will be, and he'll be able to take down Barons extremely fast. This is the cheese that JD Gaming pulled during Demacia Cup, where they actually just rushed the early Liandry's Anguish, and that has no damage cap against legendary monsters. So you can just rush that in 20 minutes and try to turn the fight around. JD Gaming have been known to basically rush 20-minute Barons. This is one of their bread and butter plays, and if I had to guess, that's probably the reason behind the Liandry's Anguish.
You know, it was pretty much like in the definition of top LPL teams in 2020, if you looked it up, was you need to be willing to rush a Baron out of nowhere. It was all the top teams: IG, Top Esports, JDG, Suning. They're all just ready at the 20-minute mark to just go straight to that Baron and look for the decisive play.
In the LPL, we don't call that a coin flip, we call that pushing your advantage, and Zoom is definitely doing just that into the top side. He's going to take this 1v2. Kanavi is rotating in, but it's still going to be a 2v3 situation. Never mind, Zoom gets his first kill. Aiming is going in, but when Zoom finds the second kill, and Kanavi is in a pretty dangerous situation. However, help is coming for him. Aiming is knocked down, and oh my god, how is Zoom doing this once again? He's just showcasing himself to be just the better player. The counter picks don't matter. The numbers don't matter. Zoom is going to take you down regardless.
And JDG just doing a great job of playing through this top side. I'm not quite sure why Mark and Zeka are still here. Mark's going to get locked down, but luckily JDG aren't able to follow up. We don't have Rift Herald back up yet, but at least... Ooh, we see Camille coming in.
The emotes.
Oh, God.
Cheeky toothbrush. This is what Yagao is. Just telling you some trivia about Yagao. His name does mean toothpaste, and every time we have a photo shoot for him, Yagao does bring a toothbrush to that photo shoot. So I'm just going to call him Cheeky Toothbrush in this one. Does get away, shows some emotions right there, and they're just toying with the psyche of BLG at this point. They're just tearing them apart. I will say, though, the game is still pretty close. It's only 2,000 gold apart, and I want to ask you, how can BLG get back into this one?
I definitely want to see BLG just kind of go back to a similar plan that they did last game. I don't feel like you're at the point, especially with how far ahead Zoom is, where you're playing for Camille to be like a win condition through side lanes. You're definitely playing as like a 5-man formation where BiuBiu has to be the one to lock down. Theoretically, I guess it should be Loken and try to burst him out at the start of the fight. The problem this time around is, since Kanavi's building as a carry threat as well, and that Yagao is actually getting accelerated, you don't have enough lockdown to take down all the damage from the side of JDG. You do have better lockdown this game, in my opinion, with the Hextech Ultimatum, but now JDG have diversified their like item spread.
And Aiming is definitely feeling the brunt of that damage. Mark actually misses the flash as he goes in. Really good play by Loken. He dashes out, and he's going to find the kill on the return as well. BiuBiu is caught in such a bad position. Aiming has to get his ass out of there as well, and BiuBiu caught behind enemy lines. Where can he actually go from this one? Destiny is going to come in. They're not going to let this kill get away, and it was a good attempt on the side of BLG, but unfortunately for them, they're a little bit too far behind. Amy still trying to rush into the play. They're trying to go for Kanavi, but a great condemn coming out from Loken actually stops it, and LvMao tries to keep Zeka in play. Zeka actually able to get out of that one, trade one kill back, and this fight is still going. It's going to be a 2v2. Amy goes in, but he doesn't have the damage anymore. Summoner's all down, doesn't get the Infernal trigger, and Zoom is going to clean up that kill with the 3 mark. Yagao chancing into this fight. Kanavi is back in. There's nothing Meteor can do, and it definitely feels like Zeka and Meteor are playing with a bit of tilt here, trying to find those return kills where I don't think they have any chance on these. Kanavi's going to continue chasing as he does have the extra movement speed coming in. Does tag it again. Zoom is still chasing, gets the 3 proc, and that's going to be the extra movement speed. Meteor has to run, has to escape from this one. And I don't know, man. I feel like Meteor and BLG in general are trying to come back onto the map with their mechanics. They're trying to do what JD Gaming has done to them, but it's just not working.
It's even worse than it was last game as well, because again, the kills are spread so evenly throughout your whole team. So now it's not only like one member having a massive item advantage. JDG's whole team has an item advantage over BLG's, and JDG are just kiting out a lot of these engages so perfectly. We know what BLG's comp wants to do. That you have the Shirelias, you have the Camille, you want to run forward.
Oh no, Mark is about to go down right here. Aiming pops the W to try and shield him from some damage. Doesn't really work out. One projectile is not going to keep Mark alive. and he kind of dies out of nowhere. That's a lot of wave clear and engage potential, so Kanavi is just going to walk straight in, gets the sleep down, and they get the cleanse away from aiming. Amy's still ticking down on HP. BiuBiu, on the meantime, trying to find something on the back end of that. He really should pick his fights a little bit better because that did absolutely nothing, and BiuBiu just going to go down for free.
And JDG, great positioning, push up mid. They're able to pivot towards bottom where Yagao is already pushing. Use that to catch out BiuBiu. They're going to be able to take blue buff as well. They're going to be able to pick up Dragon. And they should even be able to pivot this into a bottom lane turret. So BLG picking up potentially like 3K worth of gold on the map in that one play.
I just want to slight correction
Maybe
right there. It's JD Gaming.
That was a bit
going to be
dramatic.
taking up. I think you're right, though. I definitely think that play was worth 3K. You get the cleanse, you get the mid lane tower, you get the Drake, you get the bot as well. So gold in the favor of JD Gaming. We're going to see that Shirelia's battle song being popped, trying to find Loken. Loken's in a 4v1 situation. I don't think he's going to be able to get out of this one, but he's sure going to make it close. So BLG finally make use of this pick composition. They find Loken in the middle of nowhere. The question is, what are they going to do with this?
Realistically, they don't really have an option. Going towards Baron is too risky. JDG do have quite good fighting potential in chokes with, you know, Sett, Lillia. They have a lot of like AoE tools, but I like how we even saw there, BLG didn't have any vision or tabs in where a lot of JDG members were. That's why Zeka actually had to blow his TP to show up, because they don't know if they're just collapsing on a solo Vayne or if there are more members in that bottom side river, where we do see JDG have 2 red wards.
We do see the Colonel sing a different tone this time, being massively in favor of JD Gaming, 77% in their favor, and giving a couple key nods to the likes of both Zeka and I believe Kanavi on either side. Those are considered for one of the reasons of getting the MVP in this series. So we like to see the Colonel actually shifting to the right side of this series as it goes on. JD Gaming, I think right now this is a bit of a lull in the game, and they're just going to try and set up for this Drake at this point. They have total control of the river. Not a lot that BLG can do. Honestly, the only thing I'm waiting on right now is I feel like some masterful play coming in from aiming. Maybe that can shift the power balance between these two teams, but I'm not holding my breath.
I feel like a big problem as well is the fact that we have two Zhonya's coming out on the side of JDG, right? We have Yagao and Kanavi both picking one up, which is not only good against how much AD BLG's comp has, but BLG's comp, again, is very, like, cooldown reliant. You kind of want to get in there in one swift engage and, like, take a target out. We've talked about how many members of JDG are fed, so if you are engaging onto the Lillia or to the Twisted Fate, they're just going to buy time with the Zhonya's Hourglass. Your cooldowns are now going to be kind of like locked in, and the rest of JDG are going to be able to clean up the fight. So it's, as the game progresses, I feel like JDG are making like smarter choices in terms of itemization, where it's punishing BLG even more. And like you said, it does feel like a bit of tilt coming out from some of the BLG players. They are a very young squad. We know Zeka just coming in last year, so you know, still a lot of pressure on him. He did come in as kind of Koma's like hand-picked boy onto the Vici squad of last year. Now, of course, coming into BLG.
A lot of expectations on the shoulders of Zeka to kind of fix this squadron. I think I speak for everyone when we saw BLG last year only making it to the 12th place in the LPL despite having such a good roster, despite having all of that talent. Now this time around, they've changed 4 players on their team, only keeping Meteor in the lineup and adding the likes of Aiming and BiuBiu to the rest of the squad. I just want to take a step back and kind of talk to you about where you see BLG in the general lineup of the LPL. Are they going to be a top 4 contender? Are they going to be a playoff team? Or where do you see them?
I think BLG, for the most part, definitely have the talent level to be around like the top 6 to 8 area. BiuBiu might be the one kind of glaring weakness, to where, again, BiuBiu is serviceable in the LPL. We saw that on V5. V5 also finished, I think, 6th in playoffs, so is able to work out, but it definitely feels like LPL just keeps leveling up in terms of talent. So BiuBiu might get punished this split against people like Breathe. We're seeing it now against Zoom. You have Nuggery in the league now, so definitely in the upper echelon of LPL, but not a champion contender yet.
I had them slightly outside of playoffs. I felt like their changes were great, however, not really enough to take them into the top 8 spot. But Now that I say that, we do have to remember the playoff actually has been expanded to 10 seats. So
True.
even if you don't upgrade enough, you could still make it in to the LPL playoffs. That's going to be a very exciting event with 4 extra BO3s and double elimination being brought into that one. Right now, we do see the Mountain Soul on the cards for JD Gaming. They're setting up for this one. They're going to go straight in and tag some slows down onto Mark. He's going to get hit up. I don't think he can go forward anymore.
Clement, I feel it. I feel it. It's time for blood, Clement Chu. These teams are ready. We're seeing Mark posturing. We're seeing JDG setting up the vision. It's time.
Going to be blood for the blood god. Come on, let's go, Zoom. Let's get us started. Okay, I went a bit too early. Sorry.
You did go too early. That was...
You hyped me up. You led me into this.
The Mega's coming, Clement. The Mega's coming.
Okay, Zoom is definitely finding his way into this. He has the Mega, but he can't use the double jump anymore to get into the back line, and it looks like BLG... I'm sorry, man. You baited me into that one. There was no blood for the blood god. There wasn't even a drop. JD Gaming are just going to take this one away.
I wanted to believe Clement. Oh, maybe there's blood for the blood god now.
Zeka does have the Zhonya's right here. There's only 3 members on BLG. They do get away with the flash and burn the ultimate from the likes of Loken. However, that's still not going to stop the onslaught of JD Gaming. They're going to continue to push this one in, and it's going to be up to BLG to answer this. They might just have to give this one away by the looks of it. Question mark coming out from Zoom. Not really understanding that play from Zeka. Definitely feels like a little bit tilt on the younger players from the side of BLG. And once again, they're just going to have to be giving up free objectives. Dragon Soul now on the likes of JD Gaming, and it looks like this series is slipping away from the hands of BLG.
Look, famous NIP coach Clement Chu. This game is like a roller coaster right now, you know? You slow down as you start to go up for the biggest drop of them all. I might have baited you earlier, I might have baited myself earlier, but I feel it. In the next few minutes, Clement, it's coming. The full 5v5, the full like 10 deaths, everyone's gonna die on the Rift. It'll be here.
All right. We've seen this being done by Amy before. He was a 1v9 player on KT. He can be a 1v9 player in the LPL too. Sure, your mid lane's not doing so hot. Sure, your top lane's getting crushed, but we trust you, Amy. We know what you're capable of. And you're on that 100 ban pick champion with the likes of Samira. She's almost about to get her Infinity Edge. I'm actually a little bit shocked she doesn't have it just yet. But once she does get that, there's still hope. There's still a chance. So that's what we're going to be waiting on. We're going to be waiting on Amy to make the miracle play, most likely in the Baron Pit. That's going to be my guess as well. And we're going to have blood.
I feel like the worst part is, again, as the game has gone longer, we now also have Loken picking up a stopwatch as well. We talked about the problem with these Zhonya's hourglasses into like the formation that these teams end up fighting out in. And I feel like the problem is BLG's comp, I don't think should do well in like a full 5v5 extended brawl. It definitely screams to me a lot more of like picking off and bursting a member outright. You would think that this is where Samira should thrive, but I think we've seen a lot of past fights. JDG have a lot of ways of like shutting her down, whether it's Sett ult, gold card, Zoom.
BiuBiu going in, but it's actually going to be a 2v1 in favor of JD Gaming. BiuBiu used the Hextech ultimatum early just to dodge up on the wall up, and he's not going to have that as the other members of JD Gaming come flooding into the scene. A good attempt by BiuBiu to get something going, but Yagao with the Destiny can just arrive at the scene faster.
Yeah, and again, we already have Soul for the side of JDG, Elder coming up in a few minutes. It feels like the plan for BLG at this point is just buy time, keep making our way towards these item breakpoints. We don't want to necessarily coin flip like we were trying to do a few minutes ago, looking for random engages, looking for random picks. It's all about getting gold into our pockets. We have a Camille, we have a Samira. They still believe there's a chance they can, you know, take a team fight if things go right. I guess the good thing for them, right, is that JDG don't have too much, like, I'd say easy hard engage, you know, something like the Galio taunt or like a Maokai W. The problem is that we've seen JDG are just a better team mechanically, and that they've used the tools that they have to outplay BLG in a lot of these team fights, whether it's the Condemned, whether it's the Showstopper, whether it's just a gold card. Kanavi's had massive sleeps this series. Like, it definitely feels like BLG need a play like last game where Loken just ran into all of them. And it could happen.
So,
it could happen.
It could definitely happen. Their hopes are definitely on Loken in this one. He's the hyper carrier of the team. Maybe if he falls down early, they can find something. But JD Gaming, they're going to start the Baron up right here. They're in a massive advantage. It's going to be up to Meteor to hopefully get into the pit. Meteor is actually going to get knocked back by the likes of LvMao, taken away by Showstopper. And this is going to be a massive sleep. 2 people are slept up here. Mark is likely going to go down as LvMao continues to chase him. Does fall to Kanavi and the DOT damage. Zeka goes down as well. And BiuBiu is continuing to push. So not really showing up on the fight whatsoever. He does get 1 tower for his troubles, but probably not enough. And JD Gaming are going to continue the onslaught.
And it's just not worth, in my opinion. I understand BLG don't have many options. There really isn't a better choice than what they decided to do. But JDG can just keep pushing, potentially look for the base. That timer's still 20 seconds on Zeka.
JD Gaming with Yagao are coming back to make a statement. Of course, they always have slow starts to the seasons, but when they have their full rosters on, they look as good as always. Your top 2 best team in the LPL last year and in 2019 as well. They're going to be putting the finishing touches onto this one. Can BLG find a kill? Can they stave off this onslaught? There's still 1 cannon minion going in, and Zoom does find the stun lockup onto the likes of Mark. Mark does go down. It's going to be a 5v4 from here on out, and BLG are running for their fountain. They can't take up this damage. It's going to be a 4-man sleep coming in from Kanavi as he just throws shade onto BLG as they hunker down in their own fountain. Nothing much that they can do. Zeka still has some fight in him. He goes up, he gets a taunt, but it's too little too late. And congratulations to JD Gaming. They put a W next to their name onto the win column.
Beautiful to see from JDG, right? They had a very shaky series up against the likes of IG. We were kind of questioning how the team would develop together. They bring back in Yagao, and though I don't feel like Xie was necessarily their problem, this was a team that's played together for such a long time. The comforts there, they're very risky. I don't know if we could still call them the smartest team in LPL by any means, but very good play overall. I think Zoom had a good series. Kanavi having a spectacular game 2 on this Lillia. Even that game 1 sleep where he jumped in 4v5 was absolutely beautiful. I think it hit 4 members, if not all, on the side of BLG. So
it was a 4-man for sure.
Definitely JDG answering some questions, right? Lose to IG, who's a potential top team, beating BLG, who we all have somewhere placed in the middle to upper echelon. So JDG so far cementing their place in the LPL.
I have no doubts that Korn definitely is a fan of JD Gaming. There's tons of bloodshed. There's tons of things that really shouldn't happen. In Chinese, we have a saying called unscientific team fight. That is definitely what JD Gaming bring to the table. Those have always been the highlights of LPL. And I'm just so glad. I'm just so happy that with top esports dropping off, we still have JD Gaming delivering on the same standards of 2020, showcasing that they can be that top tier team, that they can deliver the beating onto teams that have, frankly, lesser players.
The thing that I like that we talked about in game was you started to bring up the like term coin flip, and there's one really like interesting quote that Nelson, the former coach of LNG, said about coin flips that, you know, a coin flip is not necessarily 50-50. If my team has played out this scenario, played out these champions more, it's not exactly a 50-50 coin flip. Sure, is it still a coin flip in a scenario? Yes. But we're more well-practiced, we're more well-versed. We feel confident coming out ahead a majority of the time. And it does feel like that kind of saying is what it looked like at points in these games where JDG definitely looked like they were kind of coin flipping some scenarios in a sense, but we're always able to just come out with better players.
It could just be they have a better understanding. I like the concept that you were talking about, and I think a lot of coaches have mentioned this before. It's not really a coin flip, but it's kind of a threshold for risk. Some teams have a much lower threshold where they won't walk into a play unless they're 70% sure that they can come out ahead of it, while other teams like JD Gaming, they will take the 55% and they will run all the way to the bank with that sort of a play. So just great to see JD Gaming finally popping back in shape. I do want to turn a little bit of questions towards BLG, because I think in this series we saw BLG where aiming still looked pretty good. Their team fight was a bit questionable, but in general the problem seemed to be Zeka and Mark still sort of stuck in their kind of pick potential, kind of engaged sort of mindset, and not really gelling with the vibe or what we expected at least out of BLG, trying to play front to back. Do you think that's the issue? What do you want to see them change?
I think there were a few problems to where We did expect BLG to play around the bot side just because of the dynamic of their players. I still think their comp would have been maybe a little better served to give BiuBiu a bit of pressure early on. And we could also see BiuBiu struggling in lane. Both games definitely shouldn't happen this much if BLG want to be a top contender. And as the game went on, it definitely seemed like Zeka felt very pressured into having to make something happen and would look for a lot of picks that the team didn't need, like you're saying. So it definitely feels like there's a combination of like growing pains, still like playing for your team comp versus playing for like your team identity that BLG will have to figure out. But there's still a very good foundation for this team about playing around bot side. We've seen Aiming and Mark consistently doing well in lane matchups. They do draft a lot of winning lane matchups, but still, we've seen teams like V5 last season would do that consistently. Draft a winning bot lane, play with your jungler, and win out the game that way. If BLG can, consistently draft around that and go for that style, I definitely think there's a lot of growing that this team can do.
And that's always a super interesting question that you brought up. We definitely think the team identity of BLG should be something more like front to back, should be centered around aiming. But, honestly, this meta, the front to back teamfights haven't been doing all that well. The teams that we have been seeing winning out have actually been somewhat similar to what BLG drafted, where you have the Camille, you have the Galio making plays around the map. Just a very dynamic team play overall. And I want to ask you, as someone who just went to Worlds in 2019 and was a coach on that stage, how do you kind of decide and how do you evaluate your drafting when you're caught between going for team identity or just going for what's been tried and true in the meta?
I think when I worked with younger players, I always thought that just drafting for the meta and what's tried and true was better. But the more you work with veterans who are kind of more set in their ideals, I think you quickly realize playing towards your players' personalities, strengths, voices, it just kind of works out better. So, especially here in the LPL, where I think every team is a bit of a specialist team. Every team just has their one or two identities. They play super hard towards that identity. And then if it's the meta, they win Worlds. And if it's not, you hope for next year. So I definitely think BLG should double down on their team identity and on their strengths and, try and find a way to work it through the meta. But I still think it's better to stay true to your players.
Does that mean you're always drafting Draven for BRTT?
Yes. Hey, I always wanted to, every time. If it was up, I would have picked it.
Okay, that's some great answers, some great insight from our coach Lyric right here. So pretty interesting games overall. Personally, for me, I do agree, but I think there's a caveat here where there is certain levels that we're talking about. I do actually agree with the fact that if you have a bunch of veteran players and the meta just doesn't fit them, sometimes you do have to wait for next year. That's kind of how League of Legends has been. You're not shying away from the subject that teams are very meta dependent at times. However, coming back to BLG, do you think that they could have drafted better, maybe going for the Ornn for the likes of BiuBiu? Because that top lane is going to be an issue. We have seen in 2 series now from BLG, BiuBiu has not looked great on certain champions in certain matchups. Are you willing to just put him on throughout the entire split? Are you willing to just put him on like counter pick top lane? Because that feels like such a drag to the team's resources. And I think drafting is incredibly important. If you're always giving last pick to your top laner and he's still not delivering, what do you do then? Do you kind of pivot towards maybe just Ornn blind pick all the time? Because that's kind of what I would do.
Yeah, I definitely think they could have. They could have even picked up the Gnar earlier, right? When we saw they decided not to ban it, we've seen that Gnar has just been such a strong blind pick. They could have picked that one up early, and I don't think Gnar has a ton of like bad lane matchups. We even talked about the Camille, which is like a pseudo counter. I think it's more of a skill matchup, which BiuBiu could have played that out fine. Ornn, even if he fell behind, he probably would have fell behind more than he did this game, but at least he would be able to offer some utility in team fights to where if you're a Camille that's 50 CS behind, you're not winning the side lane against Gnar. If you Hextech ultimatum on the AD carry, you're actually just going to get solo killed yourself. It felt like BiuBiu had no role he could perform in that game because of the champion and role he was put on.
Definitely feels like that was the case right there. So maybe just go back to the Ornn next time for BiuBiu. We are going to be showcasing our MVP of Game 2 right here, and it is going to be the likes of Kanavi. Had a masterful game winning those 2v2 duels in the middle lane when they were double AP against AP AD. So really just doing the impossible here, and finally Kanavi showing some great signs of life. He was our 2020 Spring Split MVP, but he's been pretty quiet for a while.
Yeah, obviously not having the greatest worlds, but I mean, there was no doubt this man was bodying LPL for the majority of 2020, was a clear standout. JDG were the first LPL team that really started playing that style around just kind of throwing all your resources towards the jungler, obviously with, catch-up XP being removed, the jungle XP after level 9 being more, like all these things JDG were a pioneer for in the LPL last year. So I definitely think Kanavi still has the stuff to be a primary carry. You talked about it playing through a lot of these 2v2s. It felt like Kanavi saved Yagao from many situations where he should have died just by the fact that he found EXP and gold advantages, and he had a level lead on Meteor most of the game. So I definitely feel like this feels like another good year potentially, for Kanavi. Meta's definitely in his wheelhouse.
I agree with you 100% right there. With Yagao back, he looks a lot more comfortable on the map. And that really does kind of lead us to the next big question, because, Mystic is going to be coming in. We do expect Xie to be kind of the mid laner because they've been pairing for so long. How do you think someone like Kanavi is going to fit into a team atmosphere where most of the gold, at least historically, is going towards Mystic as the AD carry? He's probably going to have to play a supportive role and kind of walk away from that carry position. Do you think Kanavi can function in what essentially is a W2017 style?
My guess as of right now would be no. And there's an interesting story I remember from an interview where I think it was Zoom or Kanavi actually said in an interview that, like, when Kanavi was joining the team, like, Kanavi wanted to be played around, and they all put the confidence in, like, hey, we will play for you, we'll put resources in you, we'll play selflessly, don't worry about it, if you have the ability, we'll support you. So I don't know if JDG changed that style, if they'll still work the same way.
Really interesting things coming up for JD Gaming. However, we're going to toss it over to